So welcome back to Third Age Reforged and to 2, possibly 3 battle replays from 0.97 that I was given by Kuro, one of the lead developers, and this is going to be concerning specifically one faction. Well, one faction is going to be involved in both battles and will be the focus of both of these replays, and that is going to be MIRKWOOD, which a lot of people are big fans of MIRKWOOD, and I can see why, because MIRKWOOD obviously they look fantastic like most of the other Elven factions do. And they have more of a ranged focus for the most part, but particularly with this first battle here, we're going to be seeing a different side to MIRKWOOD, a little bit more aggression, maybe a little bit lighter in terms of archers, but proving that MIRKWOOD do have versatility and are not just limited to trying to kite and hide and use their archers against numerically superior foes or foes with similar quality to themselves. They can mix it in melee as well. So we will be having a look at MIRKWOOD's composition first of all, and Kuro is going to be playing as them. Across the way, we can see that one of the new factions anyway, for 0.97, is also going to be involved, and that is Numenor, played by FFA Muffins. And Numenor are very strong. In terms of quality, they are every bit the equal of the Elven factions, so usually where the Elves can rely on having a distinct quality advantage over their foes, this time it's relatively even, although in different ways. Numenor have a little bit more of an armour focus. They also have quite a lot of nice javelins and heavily armoured archers from a distance, as well as sort of more heavily armoured mounted cavalry to MIRKWOOD. But obviously MIRKWOOD generally will have more diverse archers, and also their forces will be relying a little bit more heavily on melee defence, which in many ways could help them in this situation. So, we can see out here on the flank we have some heavy Elven spears. They here EEC. Obviously they will still perform very much the same role in 0.97 as they did in 0.96, although spears in general will be a little bit more useful, especially when it comes to doing damage to cavalry a little bit more quickly. Heavy Elven spears were always fairly useful, to be fair, because they weren't really hit so much by having super low attack stats, and the spear malice didn't hurt them too badly, so this should be a good all-around buff for the heavy Elven spears as well, considering spears are going to be more effective. We have a fairly hefty amount of Here E Alth here on the front line. Now the Here E Alth, just like the Here EEC, they don't have super high armour values. They do have more armour than most of the other MIRKWOOD forces. The Here units in general do have the heavier armour, but that is still only an armour value of, I believe, 6. Lothlorien and Imladris both have higher armour values than this, but MIRKWOOD do have better armour than Linden, which is where they fall on the spectrum of the Elven units. So the Here E Alth forming the front line. Unsurprising, because Numenor can field some pretty nasty archers of their own, so the Here E Alth, while they may not have super high armour values, they do have a very nice shield value, and obviously here we can see MIRKWOOD are going to be very aggressive, trying to get right into the face of Numenor as quickly as possible. Backing them up we have the Here E Lang, which obviously the heavy Elven swordsman, or swordmaster unit, depending on which definition you prefer. And the Here E Lang, obviously, most of the time in a sustained melee fight they will do very, very well for themselves, you know, because the skill is obviously very high, the attack stats are very high, and two-handed swordsmen may not be AP, but just in general the elves have got such high melee defense that they can last for a really long time in melee and really have the time to dish out that impressive damage stat that they have. Back here in the middle we can see not the General's Bodyguard, but we have the Palace Guard. So I'm a big fan of sort of MIRKWOOD losing some of the more super complicated names they have, just so it's a little easier for me to actually say them. But the Palace Guard, obviously the echoes of a bygone age when the Elder Palace Guard were the most OP unit in the game. I would still say honestly that the Palace Guard are perhaps the best all-around multiple HP unit in the game, purely because they combine a level of prowess in an infantry fight which is comparable to the Temple Executioners and Guard of the Havens, which obviously are some of the higher tier two-handed swordsmen, but they also have a very nice anti-cavalry bonus from being two-handed spearmen, which offers them a little bit more versatility. Cavalry is going to want to go absolutely nowhere near these guys, which obviously for a smaller unit, a beefy cavalry charge is one of the things which can really hurt them. But the Palace Guard are a little bit less susceptible to that, so overall a very strong unit, and obviously going to be the centre of this heavy MIRKWOOD push alongside this unit, the Ents. Now the Ents are a topic of discussion at the moment in the Discord among the devs, because I'm not sure whether MIRKWOOD are actually going to be keeping them in the full release. And the reason for this is they are essentially, I think, slightly more durable versions of the Trolls, and they can deal out damage in the same way as the Trolls, but whereas the Orcs need the Trolls to do a lot of burst damage for them, because a lot of their more basic units won't be doing a lot of damage very quickly, the Elves don't really need that, especially considering a lot of the other damage dealing units we have here, like the Palace Guard and like the Here E Lang. So the Ents might not be in MIRKWOOD's roster in full release, or they might be toned down a little bit in terms of their unit size or perhaps the amount of hit points they have. Because at the moment, the Ents are always going to be brought by Mirkwood for how strong they are. It doesn't make Mirkwood unbeatable, but particularly for a faction like Numenor, who've got a lot of tools that can deal with Ents, like the Remena Marines, for example. But it is still, it gives Mirkwood a little bit too much close-up punch, as well as them having usually very strong archers. So I would expect the Ents to be at the very least tweaked before release, rather than the state they're in now. But Numenor are a faction which can deal with the Ents a little bit more quickly than some others who lack AP and a lot of high damage ranged options. More here, Eak over here, we can see that also a cavalry unit. This previously was the highest, well, the higher tier multiple HP spear cavalry Mirkwood had available to them. Their new name, Sindar of the Girdle, which Spear Cav obviously has got a big bonus against other cavalry in melee. They can also do a very nice amount of damage off the charge, so a good all-round unit. The main weakness to Mirkwood's cavalry tends to be that it is fantastic at dealing damage in melee and at range when it comes to their horse archers, but like a lot of the other parts of their army, they do lack a lot of armour. So particularly for the Sindar of the Girdle, once their hit points are gone, even more basic archers will be able to do quite a lot of damage to them very quickly. So they are micro-intensive, you do need to be careful, but that is the nature of playing as Mirkwood. You just need to sort of marshal your more fragile troops at range a little bit more carefully. Then we have 3 units of hidden Woodland Realm Axemen, previously called the Hethelly Tower, of course. Not AP, but very high attack values, very high skill as well, because they are dual-wielding units, and of course they can hide. This is one thing that Mirkwood can certainly bring to the table, a lot of hidden units, although in this case actually Mirkwood very much going for a more frontal, very brazen approach, considering Mirkwood's usual focus, but I think Kuro here is trying to prove a point that Mirkwood are quite diverse in what they can do. So 3 units of these Woodland Realm Axemen, which, interestingly enough, based on the other units that are in the Mirkwood army, this is actually the chaff of Mirkwood this time around. 3 units of these guys. That's still obviously, in comparison to other factions, this is far from a chaff unit, but they will just be getting in where they can, trying to deal damage, getting in around the Numenor defences. And then finally the one archer unit that Mirkwood have brought today, the Remnant of Amon Lank. Obviously there's only one archer unit that Mirkwood have that are stronger than this, and that would be the Elder Council. But the Remnant of Amon Lank do offer around the same level of damage, but also they offer AP in melee, which is perhaps why they've been brought today. As soon as they have expended all their ammunition, they can pull out those axes and start dealing some damage to the heavily armoured legions of Numenor. So that is going to be the entirety of Mirkwood's army, a very aggressive looking composition it is as well. And now we shall move on to FFA Muffins' army, and we shall see what Numenor have brought. So, here on the front line, he has actually gone for more skirmishers, which, considering the amount of archers that Numenor have available and the amount of archers Mirkwood have available, having more archers on the Numenorian side is not something you'll see all that often, I don't think. But we have at least 2 units here. I think it's 2 units anyway. Let's have a look. Yeah, 2 units based on the banners of Remena Marksmen. They do not have the armour upgrade, but that doesn't really matter. They may be quite similar in appearance anyway to the Arthedain Marksmen, but they are substantially stronger, both at range and especially in melee, it must be said. That is where they really shine. Numenor have quite a few similarities to Linden in that respect, where a lot of their skirmishers are hybrid units, where line infantry or perhaps spears, that sort of thing, where they get combined with their axe throwers, their javelins and their archers. It makes up for Numenor's rather small roster. They have a lot of their power condensed into fewer units, so they are very much like Linden in that respect, although obviously with a slightly more heavy-duty approach to things. Speaking of heavy duty, we have a combined front line here of the Alcarondas Legion, which of course we have seen them many times in the past because they are functionally identical to the Castamir's Legion, which should give you an idea of how strong a line infantry unit that they are. And they are going to be backed up by the Remena Sentinels, which back there you can see they do have the armour upgrade. One way that you can deal with the elves, or at least all elves that are not Linden, I would say, because Linden can certainly mix it in the same area, are pikes. You can get your pikes into position and you can hold the elves at bay, and you can make life very difficult for them. So it's not too surprising, I think, that Numenor have gone for their pikemen here. And I do believe that Remena Sentinels once again are on a similar sort of level as the Mithlond pikemen from Linden. So a very strong pike unit indeed that they can blanket their line with. And with the Alcarondas Legion in tow as well, that is a very solid front line, which the elves are probably not going to want to tackle head on. Because the Numenorians will stand firm and the elves cannot afford to get into a fight that's too grindy. The Ents are really the only unit on the Mirkwood side that I would say would come in here and do enough damage to make it worthwhile. Out here on the flanks, we do have some Remena Marines as well, which again they do not have the armour upgrade, and again They are strong in melee, but I'm sure, as most people have noticed from the Nmenrean replays that have been shown thus far, their javelins are very, very deadly, and I believe this is going to be the best hope that Numenor have for actually bringing down those Ents in this fight here. So we shall see how well things go for them. Only a 6,000 frame battle, which is why I'm showing 2 battles, of course, so 1v1s can be quite swift indeed. Backing up this front line is this... Nope, this is not the General's Bodyguard unit, but we have the slightly more elite pike unit, the Naaru Sentinels, which again, Numenor do share a few units with Umbar, Mordor and Arthedain throughout their roster, and this is one, of course, very, very strong pike unit, one of the better pike units in the game, certainly on par at least with the 1st Legion from Khazad-dûm, which gives you an idea of how strong they are. Back here, we have the Nmenrean Lancers, which I think have got... Yeah, they've got like blue capes to sort of differentiate them from the burgundy that Umbar have and the sort of sickly green that Mordor have. Obviously very strong lancers, charge bonus of 15, which is armor piercing, which could do a lot of damage to Mirkwood if it is deployed correctly. They do need to be a little bit careful, however, because they are only... If they get caught by the Ents in particular, it could be pretty ugly for them. And over on this side you can see more Remena Marines. You can see over... Actually, that's the General's Bodyguard unit. So we'll have a look at the Alcarondas Faithful for the moment. A very small but very, very strong melee knight unit. So this is obviously going to be in a similar vein to stuff like the Haven Knights or even the Witch Realm Inquisitors. In terms of a melee fight, I'd be very interested to see who would win between these guys and the Sindar of the Girdle. It might be the Mirkwood cavalry unit just because they have more. However, if any sort of ranged interference was happening in that fight, it would tilt the fight in favour of this Nmenrean Knight unit because they are substantially tougher at dealing with ranged threats than the Mirkwood cavalry. And then finally, the General's Bodyguard unit, we have the Royal Legion of Armenelos, which very, very fine looking unit indeed. They look essentially like more blinged out versions of the Wardens of the White Tower from Gondor. And in that vein, they are one of the strongest, if not the strongest, multiple HP sword and board unit in the game now. Obviously the Wardens of the White Tower are another unit which can sort of throw its hat into that ring, as well as the Witch Realm Blackguard from Angmar. You can see our Farazon there looking resplendent as always. And this is going to be a very important unit because it is going to be sort of the centre point of this Nmenrean defence, just as the Palace Guard and the Ents are going to be the centre point of the Mirkwood attack. Without further ado, let's begin. And Mirkwood will be rushing forward here because they do have a range disadvantage, and they definitely want to be getting those Ents into play as quickly as they possibly can. So you can see already the arrows flying forth, and I believe, yes, he is going. He's actually going for a unit of Hiri Alth. That actually does surprise me a little bit. I think the Hiri Lung would be the better target, no shield value on them, and also much more of a threat in sustained melee to the Numenorians than the Hiri Alth, with those heightened attack values. The Hiri Ek obviously pushing out on the flanks to try and prevent the Numenorian cavalry, because Numenor have got 2 units of cavalry as well, so the ranged and the cav advantage. Mirkwood going all in here on infantry, which is not something you see a great deal of, but here you can see the pikes are coming into position, and this could be how this fight begins is probably going to decide things here, because if Numenor can get a very nice front line going, their pikes should be enough to keep their lines in shape, but if they don't, they're in trouble. And you can see actually the Remena Marines, who are actually moving forwards, failed to throw their javelins in time, and they are now being engaged by the Woodland Realm Axemen. Now the Remena Marines are strong enough that they should actually be able to defeat the Woodland Realm Axemen 1-to-1, but the real problem is they need to throw their javelin payload quickly to do some damage to the Mirkwood forces. The frontline engagement is on the way. The Sentinels should be able to get their pikes down, but at least for the first part of this fight, Mirkwood should be able to get some decent damage done. The Hiri Alth going toe-to-toe with the Alcarondas Legion. So obviously a battle of very, very strong line infantry units here. And you can see that Mirkwood trying to overload this flank with all of their Woodland Realm Axemen, getting their Revenant of Amon Lank to shoot right along the length of the Numenorian line. However, up here, you would have to say, Remena Marksmen over there, Remena Marines, it's on this flank where Mirkwood are going to pay for that. They're going to have to hope that the Hiri Ek and Hiri Alth that they've sent over to this flank will be able to withstand the pressure from the Numenorian front line and skirmishers. But Elven units are pretty tough, especially when it comes to melee because of their heightened defense values. We'll see if the Javelins are going to be enough to tilt the balance of power in this fight. Meanwhile, Alcarondas Legion and Remena Sentinels are very, very effective front line. So far doing well against the Mirkwood push. However, where are the Ents? Here they are getting right into this blob here, getting stuck in. And you can see already the Ents doing a lot of damage. And the Remena Marines need to be the ones to bring the Ents down here, because they are the ones which can deal damage more quickly. Most of the other Numenorian line are units which have a bit of a slow burn when it comes to their damage. A lot of line infantry, a lot of pikes, a lot of archers doing their damage over a long period of time. The other option could be to try and charge them with the Nmenrean Lancers, but that is very, very risky indeed with how they very much behave like trolls. So if you keep cavalry in melee with them for too long, that's going to be very bad for them. Woodland Realm Axemen really overloading this flank, causing a bit of panic here. The Nmenrean cavalry should be able to keep this under control, but the problem is the Nmenrean cavalry really needs to be charging into the rear of the Mirkwood front line to try and start breaking it. It does look as though that's what's going to be happening. The Nmenrean Lancers heading up to this section of the battlefield over here where Numenor have got a distinct advantage. Obviously this was where Mirkwood were really just sending a token force to try and hold these units at bay. Most of their focus is going to be down here in the centre and on the other flank. You can see the Remnant of Amon Lank firing into this area. Nmenrean Arrow Sentinels with their shields will be a little bit more resilient to that, so they're probably not going to be the targets, honestly. Those Remnant Marksmen trying to shoot the Woodland Realm Axemen. Maybe the Sindar of the Girdle would be the better choice, because if that Mirkwood cavalry gets a good rear charge in this section over here, a whole wing of the Numenorian army could collapse. The same is true for Mirkwood, however, because the Nmenrean Lancers are in a much more threatening position more readily. The Palace Guard are in here with the Ents, and that is 2 units who you really don't want to get on the wrong side of if you can help it. Going back up to 1 speed, you can see a clash of the Titans, but the Alcarondas Faithful have already taken losses, and the Sindar of the Girdle just completely ignore them. The Woodland Realm Axemen still proving to be an annoyance. Again, the closest thing to chaff in this fight, really. But here you can see the beleaguered Numenorian front line where the Ents are. Now the Nmenrean Lancers are coming in. But interestingly enough, the Hiri Lang actually spread out a little bit, and that made the charge a little bit less effective. However, that unit of Hiri Lang still took an awful lot of casualties. The Ents also came out, which forced the Nmenrean Lancers to very quickly get away from that engagement. Numenor's starting to wrap up the line, however, so Mirkwood definitely need to... they're both wrapping up each other's lines, and I would say so far that Mirkwood have probably had the better of it because their cavalry is largely untouched. Whereas the Numenorian cavalry has already taken a fair amount of damage. You can see over here that the Hiri Lang actually chasing down the Nmenrean Lancers. Very impressive there. But the Ents, the real powerhouse here at the centre of the Mirkwood force, very difficult for Numenor to bring them down without using those javelins. And the Remena Marines only have, I think, 2 volleys in them each, so they may have already been utilised. And now you can see that Mirkwood's starting to surround the surround, almost. And that's bad. The Remnant of Amon Lank still shooting. Once again, the Numenorians trying to build up a new front line over here. Again, the Alcarondas Faithful and the Remena Sentinels forming a new front line. Those Numenorian Lancers charging in once again, trying to do damage. And they are doing damage, but I'm not sure it's quick enough. And they are taking losses all the while. Meanwhile, Sindar of the Girdle over here, doing some nice damage to the Remena Marksmen. They really don't have a choice but to do that, because otherwise the Remena Marksmen will just focus down the Sindar of the Girdle. Here you can see the Remena Marksmen getting into position once again. The Ents doing relatively well, but the Numenorians still say victory is a distinct possibility, so the Ents perhaps, only 4 of them left alive. Have they done enough damage quickly enough? That is the question. The Remnant of Amon Lank doing a decent amount of damage there. Again, Mirkwood were collapsing along the line, but you've got to give credit to FFA Muffins here. He has set up another front line, which is starting to look a little bit ropey, to be fair. It's still a losing battle on this side, I would have to say. And Ar-Pharazôn gutted by the Palace Guard. The Palace Guard fighting off against the Royal Legion of Armenelos, and the Palace Guard I would give the advantage to in that fight, even if the Palace Guard have been in melee for longer, purely because the Royal Legion are a little bit more defence focused, whereas the Palace Guard much more about that attack. Obviously they have no need for a shield with their dual-sided glaive. And here the Nmenrean Lancer is still pretty healthy actually, so they've managed to sort of preserve themselves much better than the Alcarondas Faithful did. Speaking of which, the Sindar of the Girdle are also taking pretty consistent losses as time goes on. Those Remnant Marines still have ammunition. If they can get a good volley off, that could be the sort of thing which turns the match around. But the Remnant Marksmen here, that is a big break. That is a lot of men which are broken beneath the charge of the Sindar. And now they're going to get out of there. If they can chase them all the way off, that's a big loss. In fact, that's a loss I don't think Numenor can recover from. They needed those units providing support, because elsewhere they are actually winning over on this side. The Alcarondas Legion and Remena Sentinels doing very well. Even the Royal Legion of Armenelos actually, with support from pikemen, managing to do some good damage to the Palace Guard. Here you can see the Numenorian Lancers trying to charge into the back of this section of line over here, which is a good move. But overall, I don't feel as though the Numenorian Lancers are going to be able to do enough damage to turn this fight around for Numenor. The Remnant of Amon Lank are still almost completely healthy, and they will add their own AP to the fight when they start charging into melee. Here you can see the Palace Guard slipping through the lines. Again, more Remena Marines are breaking. Pretty much the entirety of the Nmenrean skirmish force at this point is in retreat. Now though, Numenor trying to wrap up this line into the side of the Hirti Alth and Palace Guard. Those Remena Sentinels I think are going to try and zone out the Sindar of the Girdle. This is a very, I was going to say, that's a very interesting move if he charges headlong into pikes, but he didn't. But a lot of what Numenor have left are pikes, so the Sindar of the Girdle, their usefulness is probably at an end, but they did manage to pretty much entirely rout the Nmenrean skirmishers. They might be able to get a sneaky charge off on some of the Alcarondas Legion if they're away from the pikes. And here comes a charge. This is... oh, they do back out. I was going to say that was going to be painful. The Remnant of Amon Lank are now out of ammunition, but that means they're going to be able to surround this Nmenrean section of the front line. They will add AP as well as Elven skill. Actually, I think they're going to be going down to this section of the line over here. So yeah, this is going to be a good win for Mirkwood. This, you can see the Remnant of Amon Lank charging in. Definitely a personal favourite of mine in the Mirkwood roster. Very nice to have AP on such a strong unit. The Royal Legion of Armenelos. So yeah, the pikes, the one section where the pikes weren't, was with the Royal Legion, and a nice charge there from the Sindar of the Girdle. So this is going to be the end, and this was a real battle of the Titans in terms of quality. Both of these factions are able to field very small but incredibly elite armies if they so choose. And on this occasion, Mirkwood have come out on top, and you know that the Mirkwood aggression here is difficult to deal with, especially with the power of the Ents, I have to say. But overall, I feel as though the quality of Mirkwood's force that they brought, as well as stuff like the Remnant of Amon Lank, the Palace Guard. In particular, I feel like where the battle was won was the Remena Marines didn't seem to get a huge amount of damage done. Like you can see here that most of this seemed to have been in melee. Like you can always tell when there was a volley from javelins on the approach, and that wasn't what happened here. And ultimately they would have been best used against the Ents, I feel. And also the cavalry. Numenor had 2 cavalry units, and yet they still lost the cavalry engagement, unfortunately for them. Certainly the most effective cavalry unit on the field today was the Sindar of the Girdle. When those Nmenrean skirmishers were all routed by those charges, it was all over. And here you can see that the Hirti Lang slowly but surely finishing off the 2 Alcarondas Legionnaires, which are the only forces left for Numenor on the field today. Here come the rest of the Mirkwood infantry force. The Palace Guard, still 20 of them left alive. Still a lot of Remnant of Amon Lank. Still some Woodland Realm Axemen as well.
Our soldiers have fought and died well today.
And there you go. Good win there from Mirkwood. A decent portion of their army left alive as well, so good aggression here. And ultimately Numenor were not able to withstand that. Numenor slightly more numerous. Mirkwood obviously with a few less men. Let's see what did the damage. So the Ents getting 178 kills. That was where the general was as well. Obviously the real powerhouses in the line. But as I said, I feel as though the MVPs here were definitely the Sindar of the Girdle with how well they were used. And they're not the easiest cavalry to use because they can be focused down by ranged fire. You know, as soon as their hit points are gone, they are pretty vulnerable. But also, in the right hands, they are very, very effective. The Palace Guard also getting over 100 kills, as well as the Remnant of Amon Lank. That's impressive, considering Numenor are not a faction that field a lot of numbers here. They've fielded more than Mirkwood here, but only just, and that goes to show where their focuses lay. And the infantry, one of the units of Hirti Lang did okay, but the rest of them, it was much of a muchness, really. A fight between Alcarondas Legion, backed up by Remena pikes, against the Mirkwood infantry. That's going to be a bit of a meat grinder for both sides. Neither side is going to come out of that looking particularly good, but the Woodland Realm Axemen adding a bit of numbers, and really when they started swarming around the flank, that was the first warning signs really for Numenor that things maybe weren't going to go all that well. Numenor were wrapping up the line as well, but not as quickly as Mirkwood were able to do so. So that is the first battle, and we will now move on to an altogether different battle, where in this one you would have to say that in terms of a pure infantry fight, you would not expect Mirkwood to necessarily have the better of Numenor here, but they did. Very well played. Now, however, we'll move on to a fight where Mirkwood could be expected to take a pretty big advantage into the fight. So now, same 2 players, but this time Kuro will not be playing as Mirkwood. He will be playing as Rudour, and of course that means that FFA Muffins across the way over there is going to be playing as Mirkwood. I believe actually Mirkwood have brought a rather similar army. Actually, no, a few differences. In fact, it looks as though he might have a fair few hidden units. We'll go through the Mirkwood army first of all anyway. Now, Mirkwood, you would imagine, would have a pretty... You know, they would go into a match with Rudour as being the favourites, really. Rudour have got a focus around AP, which Mirkwood obviously do not rely on their armour, so that won't be as useful against them. Also, Rudauer do not have the most armour generally across their factions, which means the Mirkwood skirmishers should be very, very effective. Rudauer also a little bit more focused around numbers, like Evil Men factions tend to be less around skill, which will not stand them in very good stead if they get into a grindy fight against some of the better Elven units. So, overall, if these two armies were to fight in a vacuum and you didn't know who the players were, you'd probably back Mirkwood most of the time. But Rudauer do have a few options to deal with this, and Mirkwood can't afford to get too lax, even when they're facing a foe who maybe you would expect them to have a natural advantage against. So, let's have a look at Muffins' army here. We have Hiri Ek, who are going to be on the front line, backed up once again by the Hiri Alth. So again, Hiri Alth obviously are going to have a little bit more of a... If it comes down to a pure infantry fight, the Hiri Alth should have a more comfortable time of it in this fight than they did in the last one, where they were having to go up against Alcarondas Legion and very high quality pikemen. This time though, if it comes down to it, they should have a quality advantage. Back here, we have a unit which wasn't brought before. We have the Inner Council, which obviously are hybrid units between spears and javelins. Very, very effective at zoning out enemy cavalry, as has been noted in the past, and they should be even better at that now that spears have been made a little bit better. And also, they do offer Mirkwood some javelins, because obviously Rudauer are very well known for their own javelins, possibly the most javelin-heavy faction in the game. Harad might have something to say about that as well, though. The Hiri Lang, again, this is a unit which should do very well against the vast majority of the infantry that Rudauer can field because of their extremely high damage and extremely high skill, the sort of thing which Rudauer will struggle against if it comes down to just a pure fight in that regard. Sindar of the Girdle, we saw how effective they can be, and once again, I would say that this is a unit which Rudauer not exactly tooled up to deal with too easily. The Coldfell Maiden's probably the best bet to try and kite them with their javelins, because if it comes down to just a pure fight between them and the Franadine Nobles, once again, the Franadine Nobles are a little bit more squishy compared to a lot of other knights, and they traded that in because they are AP, which helps them a lot in some situations, but not here. Well, down here we have the Ents once again, which is where Thranduil is going to be hanging out with his big bodyguards. Obviously the Ents, we saw how brutally effective they can be, but again, Rudauer have a lot of javelins and axe throwers that they can use to try and equalise that fight a bit. More in a council, and then at the front we have the Palace Guard, which once again, the Palace Guard, Rudauer really have nothing which can go one-to-one with the Palace Guard. You know, they're going to have to try and double up in some capacity to defeat them. Now though, let's have a look at what Kuro has brought to the field today. Gone for a few more archers, which Mirkwood may very well have gone for a few archers. The Remnant of Amon Land could be hidden again. They could have gone for some Thurny Tower, or whatever they're called now. They may have been given a new name. So to try and counteract that, he has gone for some archers, although Dunman Hunters, of course, are not really designed with beating the elves in mind, because obviously now with the new rebalancing of lower tier archers, they won't just be able to bury extremely good archers beneath their heel, well, beneath all of the ammunition that they can bring to the field. So the Dunman Hunters really are just going to be here to try and keep the elven skirmishers busy should they reveal themselves, and if the elves have not brought any archers of their own, then they can shoot at whatever they please unimpeded. So overall, you can't really go too far wrong. Obviously Rudauer's archers are not really the best other than the rangers, so it makes sense to have brought them. And then we have a very defence-minded front line between the Rudauer clansmen and the Dunman pikemen, so obviously not a huge amount of investment here. The Rudauer clansmen, as far as spears go, are actually pretty decent in a few ways. They have half-decent... their defensive values are beefed up a bit by their shields, shall we say, which heavily shielded units like this are certainly not the worst thing you can bring against Mirkwood with all their skirmishers, but again, the Rudauer clansmen are not exactly the sort of thing you would expect to get a lot of damage done against a lot of the better Mirkwood infantry. Once again, we have some Dunman pikes here at the back, and cheap pikes are a good way to deal with the elves, provided they don't get skirmished down, which obviously easier said than done against Mirkwood of all people, but they can certainly punch well above their weight here. If they can stay in phalanx and keep a lot of those really deadly elven units at arm's length, it should allow Rudauer to engage in some trickery elsewhere. Meanwhile, Granadine Berserkers, axe throwers are no longer AP, it's worth saying. They just have a higher base damage, which actually will help them here, as long as they don't just bury their axes into the front of the Mirkwood units that are heavily shielded, because the shield value will make a difference here. But the Granadine Berserkers, of course, are very high damage in melee. Once again, their AP in melee will not help them, necessarily. They do have high attack values, and as far as Rudauer infantry goes, this is one of the higher quality examples, so we'll see how well they can do against the Mirkwood line troops. Now, here's an interesting unit. Once again, pretty heavy AP focus here, but javelins, of course, are capable of dishing out an incredible amount of damage regardless. So that's going to be what Rudauer are counting on here, perhaps to try and hunt down the Ents as well, the Ferodrum javelins. Once again, just like the Berserkers in melee, their AP won't help them too much, but their higher attack values might. We'll see how they get on. And then just over here we can see some Rudar Swordsmen backing them up. Basic, nothing too special about them, they get the job done. And that's really all there is to say about that. Meanwhile, a secondary line as well, made up of Franadine Pikemen. So the Franadine Pikes, once again, unsurprising to see so many Pikes against the Elves, actually. The Ents will be a bit of a problem for the Pikes, but everything else, Rudauer are sort of setting themselves up a bit like a hedgehog or a porcupine, where they're sort of prickly on all sides of attack. And the Franadine Pikes, of course, add a good shield value to this, and in the past I've noticed the Franadine Pikes actually perform as well as the Uruk-hai Pikemen. So it gives an idea of what their quality has been like. I'm not sure how they've been rebalanced in 0.97 to be fair, but the shield value is always nice and it cannot hurt against the Elves. And they're backed up by a plethora of Rudar Swordsmen again. Numbers are going to be their best friend here rather than the skill individually that they possess. And then a couple of units of Trollshaw Axe Throwers hiding here at the back once again. Not AP anymore, Axe Throwers, but they can deal a decent amount of damage over a period of time, and if they stay hidden until the end, it could be a bit messy for the Elves if they go unanswered. And then finally, Franadine Nobles, which again their AP is not going to be too helpful here, but if Sindar of the Girdle are not a factor, then their charges could win Rudauer the battle by really cutting down on the Elven numbers. So clearly, the numbers are in favour of Rudauer, but we'll see how well this goes. Let's begin. Overall, in terms of a melee fight, Rudauer are going to be relying on their pikes here, because if it comes down to just a straight close-up brawl between stuff like the Rudauer Clansmen and Swordsmen and what Mirkwood have on offer, it's going to be nasty. It's going to be real nasty. Remnant of Ammon Knights, so yeah, a very, very similar army here from Mirkwood. The only difference really is the fact that 2 Woodland Realm Axemen have been cut out and they've instead brought some Inner Council, which is an interesting move actually. I'm not sure whether that was worthwhile. I feel as though the Woodland Realm Axemen should be ideal against Rudauer actually, with their heightened attack values. Good skill, not the sort of thing that can be easily dealt with from a Rudauer perspective. As Mirkwood begin to move forward, you can actually see that the Franadine Nobles already perhaps seeing an opportunity to charge into the Woodland Realm Axemen. You can see that already Mirkwood not really enjoying the prospect of getting charged by some knights. The Inner Council actually moving back into a firing position, and I would imagine that the Rudauer Knights are going to get out of dodge, because they certainly can't afford to be hanging around too close to the Inner Council, a fantastic anti-cavalry unit. The Ents are going to be a problem, of course, knocking over their own fellows. They will, of course, all get back up. Just goes to show that they truly are trolls, but just a little bit scarier. Some Woodland Realm Axemen over on that flank as well. So actually 2 units of Woodland Realm Axemen, as well as some Sindar of the Girdle. So maybe a little bit less in terms of their central units as well than we saw against Numenor. But definitely a very different fight this. Obviously Rudauer very much focused around their numbers, whereas Numenor focused much more around their quality. But overall you would expect Numenor to be the ones to have a better time against Mirkwood just because of where they are strong, particularly when it comes down to an infantry fight like last time. Now you can see the Dunman Hunters are going to get the first volleys off. Obviously Mirkwood once again going for a very aggressive approach, and it's not surprising to see the Dunman Hunters going after the unshielded units. Here Elang taking a few volleys on the approach. No deaths yet actually, and actually they're going after the Inner Council now as well, but that's a lot of arrows. Over time this will start to have an impact. Obviously the Inner Council already losing a few men. Here you can see the Woodland Realm Axemen wrapping around the flank. Rudauer Swordsmen just waiting in position. The Ferodrum Javelins throwing a pretty savage volley there into the Hir Elang, and several of them dying off. The Ferodrum Javelins, of course, one of the better javelin units in the game. Taking a lot of losses there. Engaging with the Rudauer Swordsmen. Here come the Woodland Realm Axemen, trying to get into the Ferodrum Javelins, but the Rudauer Swordsmen are on hand to immediately assist. Meanwhile, this is a cavalry engagement, so while Rudauer's attention was focused elsewhere, this is going to be a big loss for Rudauer, because they took the charge from the Sindar of the Girdle, and then in sustained melee, the Mirkwood cavalry will still have a good advantage. Let's just go down to half speed while all of this is happening, so the Sindar of the Girdle are going to try and hunt down the Rudauer Knights. The phalanx at the front is untouched at the moment. Obviously the Elves don't really want to get too involved with the pikes from the front. They have much more efficient means of trying to dismantle Rudauer. And now you can see the Ents getting into melee with both the Franadine Pikemen and the Ferodrum Javelins, managing to close before the Javelins can land on the Ents. Now the Ferodrum Javelins do have AP and melee, which will help against the Ents. but they will still do a lot of damage. The Rudauer Swordsman just trying to clump up on the Ents here, do as much damage as they can. Meanwhile over here, this brave unit of Rudauer Swordsmen trying to stand in the way of Here-i Alth, Here-i Lang and Palace Guard. It's definitely not a fight that they're going to be able to put up for too long, especially not with more Here-i Alth on the way. But the elves are more and more leaving this central area open, which will of course allow Rudauer Clansmen and Dunman Pikemen to be redeployed around the field, which they will probably need to be as time goes on. The Trollshaw Axe Thrower is actually now in position to start throwing some axes on the elves as they advance. Meanwhile, once again, the Franadine Nobles getting real close to the Sindar of the Girdle. Pikes are on the way, so I think what Kuro was trying to do there was pin them against the edge of the map. But ultimately the Sindar of the Girdle managing to wriggle free there. Taking some damage from the Dunman Hunters, but this is certainly not terminal. As the Franadine Nobles continue to chase. It's an interesting choice to chase them. I guess they just want the... Oh, and there goes some axes as well. The axe throwers will actually do substantially more damage. They've got much higher base damage. Can do damage much more quickly than archers, particularly basic archers like the Dunman Hunters. So the Sindar of the Girdle need to get out of there because they're taking huge damage. So that means their hit points are gone. And the axe throwers will be ideal to kill them. They need to keep moving and they're not. And that's a big win that for Rudauer. Because now they can't really do as much damage as they would, because if they close in on the Rudauer lines now, the Trollshaw Axe Thrower is just going to shower them with axes, and that's going to be that. Meanwhile, the Ents perhaps charging too far, because you can see they charge through, and now the pikes have sort of prevented any reinforcements from getting to the Ents. They will, of course, rip and tear their way through a lot of Rudauer Swordsmen, but eventually attrition will tell. And you can actually tell over here that the Woodland Realm Axemen and now the Here-i Alth are trying to sort of wrap around, maybe come to the aid of the Ents. But over here, this brave unit of Rudauer Swordsmen still battling hard on the front line, even though they stand absolutely no chance against the Palace Guard in particular. Inner Council and the Remnant of Amon Lank trying to fire from afar. Not sure what the Inner Council are actually going after. See that maybe they got one volley off on the front of this Rudauer Clansman, but I don't think Kuro cares too much about these units. Trollshaw Axe Thrower is coming across at this point. Now the Here-i Lang are moving forward, so yeah, the Rudauer Swordsmen finally break, and that is going to allow the Franadine Pikemen to come into effect. Although, as Mirkwood advance forward, this is going to allow the Ferodrum Javelins to start focusing down the Palace Guard. Now all of the Rudauer Archers are also trying to focus down the Palace Guard, so it goes to show that the Palace Guard are very, very strong, but they will also attract a lot of attention on the field. They're actually attracting more attention at the moment than the Ents, and the Ents are still running roughshod over Rudauer. One of them just fell, but now you can see that the Franadine Nobles charging in, trying to get as much kills as they can. And I think this is because the Sindar of the Girdle have been neutralised. I cannot see them anymore. So that's a good win there for Rudauer. They still have their own cavalry unit, which at this point is a very depleted unit of Franadine Nobles, but they will still be able to get some kills as the fight goes on. And then a combined effort from the Rudauer Swordsmen and the Franadine Pikemen, which already wavering because they're being wrapped up here. The presence of the Ents certainly not helping as Rudauer start to break. This is an issue, of course. Evil men factions tend to have lower morale overall, and the Mirkwood morale is going to stand firm. However, the Ents are a bit of a... the Ents are the key here, I think, because if the Ents start to fall away, the primary fear-causing unit will be gone. And that should allow Rudauer to then try and get reorganised, and you can see, of course, along here. I'm actually a little bit surprised that this unit of Here-i Alth charged right into the front of this Rudauer phalanx, because this wasn't going anywhere. I guess actually these Franadine Berserkers coaxed them forward, but the Berserkers ultimately did pay the ultimate price for that, so they are going to be able to kill off the Here-i Alth. Meanwhile, up here on this flank, the Woodland Realm Axemen actually shaken. Franadine Pikemen holding firm, although the Here-i Ek are going to be doing some damage of their own. The Trollshaw Axe Throwers coming into their own, focusing down the Woodland Realm Axemen. So this really is quantity versus quality at this point. Can Rudauer hold out against this savage elven attack? The Here-i Lang now moving forward, a healthy unit of Here-i Lang as well, and they are going to shred through these Trollshaw Axe Throwers without too many issues. Now you can see, however, that with this fight won, the Here-i Alth breaking, they're going to be able to turn around a huge section of their front line, and suddenly a lot more Rudauer infantry is available. Dunman Pikemen and Rudauer Clansmen only it may be, but it's a lot of them. And the elves are going to need to fight their way through them somehow. Meanwhile, these Franadine Pikemen and Rudauer Swordsmen are broken and fighting to the death. Once again, the Palace Guard, the Ents and supporting units proving to be very, very difficult to stop. The Inner Council starting to wrap up the line. And of course, this means that the Dunman Pikemen are not going to last too long in melee. Lower morale on these lower tier units. Meanwhile, the Remnant of Ammon Lank charging in. And you would certainly expect them to not have too many issues against these Rudauer clansmen.
Only half the enemy force remains.
The AP might not be as useful against Rudauer as it would be against other factions. Now you can see the pikes moving in. This is going to be what saves Rudauer, if anything does. These peasants holding long, sharp wooden sticks. Because I can't really see anywhere else in which they're going to be able to sort of withstand this continuous elven pressure. They've still got Dunman Hunters. They've got a few units of returning swordsmen who are going to be able to get a surround off here on the Hiri Alth. Charging in, getting a few more kills, but more Mirkwood forces are on the way. You can see here that these pikemen at this point buckling under the pressure. Still a few units in the backfield over there as well. Let's see what's happening over here. These Hiri Ek are shaken. Granadine pikemen winning. I think it's because of the support of the Trollshaw axe throws more than anything else, so just from sheer numbers here, the Elven Spears are struggling. But Rudauer are going to win here in the backfield, but I would question how useful that's actually going to be. The Dunman Hunters now are being silenced, the Ents simply too strong. Meanwhile, the pikes routing off all over the place, but you can see now that it has turned into a battle of a phalanx. Rudauer are just sort of hoping and praying their pikes are going to be enough. At this point in the fight, I would say that it probably wouldn't be. I mean, the Dunman Hunters are over here doing a lot of damage to the Remnant of Ammon Lank over time. Granadine Berserkers coming in as well, having survived their brush with death on the front line. They are now back to start dishing out some damage of their own. The Remnant of Ammon Lank taking damage here. So the archers, the berserkers, but I would still say that based on the quality of the elves, although they are starting to run out of steam a bit on the front line here, Rudauer's tight formation means that the Palace Guard biting off maybe a little bit more than they can chew after being in melee for so long into a phalanx. Not easy. What about the Ents? The Ents now as well. Certainly not looking as healthy as they did. There's still a fair few of them on the front line trying to disrupt those pikes, but they've been in melee a long time themselves. Here come some Dunman Hunters charging into melee with the Trollshaw axe, trying their best to hold this Elven infantry at bay, but again it's a stalling measure only, as many of Rudauer's fights on this battle have been. Granadine pikemen on their way over here as well. These Trollshaw axe throwers, which have done so well throughout this fight, now just being stomped by the Ents, although more and more Ents are starting to die off. Granadine Berserkers over here. You can see the Remnant of Ammon Lank very depleted, but they're only fighting Dunman Hunters, so they would win that. Meanwhile, these pikes, not in an ideal formation, but considering the presence of the Ents and units that are attacking them in the rear, you can't really blame them too much for that. Over on this side, however, the Palace Guards still not enjoying their time in melee against all those pikes. Granadine Berserkers still alive, still 30 of them alive as well. These Trollshaw axe throwers coming over. It's a very, very close fight. It's very, very finely poised. Well, Remnant of Ammon Lank still fighting hard. Here at Alth here on the front line. Those Trollshaw, yeah, they do still have ammunition, so some axe throwers still available here for Rudauer that still have ammunition. Meanwhile, this one Ent caught up in all of these pikemen. Meanwhile, all of these Ents as well. Only 6 of them remaining. There goes Thranduil.
Without him, his troops will lose their will to fight.
And I believe, yeah, he was in the Ent unit, so he came charging in, barreling into this phalanx, and once again, you know, it's individually, they may be rather weak, these units, but they are greater than the sum of their parts here, and the elves starting to run out of steam a little bit. You can see how Rudauer layered their defence in a very, very intelligent way. They had their sort of cheap phalanx at the front, they had their damage dealers in behind, axe throwers at the back, they had their nobles, archers. All around, it's a very well thought out defence, this from Kura, as you would expect from someone who, you know, literally made the mod, conceptualised it. The Hiri Alth trying to do their best here. The Granadine pikes, which came forward to reinforce the line, actually getting surrounded now, so they probably won't last too long in melee, to be fair. The Woodland Realm Axemen, victory seems certain for them as they fight against the Trollshaw axe throwers. This phalanx still hanging on and now actually turning the tide a little bit. Meanwhile, the Remnant of Ammon Lank, I think maybe they took some volleys from the Trollshaw axe throwers, because now the Dunman Hunters are here. The Trollshaw axe thrower is starting to fire into the back, and this could be the end. I think Rudauer here, this might be the end of Mirkwood's attack, because now the Dunman Hunters are going to be able to get... If they have ammunition, these Dunman Hunters, it's definitely the end for Mirkwood. Even these Trollshaw axe throwers alone might be too much for them to bear, and they do still have ammunition, yeah, so this is it. Rudauer are going to be victorious, because there's nothing really the elves can do to respond to this at this point. Even if it came down to a pure melee fight, they'd be relying on this one unit of Hiri Elf to basically munch their way all along the line, which is asking a lot of a single unit, even of very strong Elven line infantry. Now here comes all of the arrows and axes being thrown into the Elven backlines, and that should be enough to take this fight beyond Mirkwood. And once again, Mirkwood were very aggressive here, but in this case it didn't pay off, and I feel as though that's because Rudauer brought a very good army with which to counter that. Because of course if Mirkwood had gone very skirmisher heavy, this Rudauer army may not necessarily have been as good. A lot of pikes, a lot of close range skirmishers, which can hide, admittedly, in the Reforged javelins and the Trollshaw axe throwers case, but even so, a skirmish heavy Mirkwood army here would have been not ideal for this Rudauer competition, I don't think. The Franadine nobles would have been working overtime to try and play whack-a-mole with all the Mirkwood skirmishers that revealed themselves. Just now, running out of ammunition, the Dunman Hunters are going to charge into the backs of all of these elves. Cut off any escape. Here comes a unit of 5 Woodland Realm Axemen. Unfortunately, that is not going to be enough to turn the tide here. Still, those Hiri out there, still pretty dangerous. I mean, it's not beyond the realms of possibility that if Rudauer were to run out of ammunition, they wouldn't have enough left in the tank, but I feel as though the numbers discrepancy at this point is so large that Rudauer are probably going to win. Inner Council. And the Trollshaw Axer is throwing their axes into the Inner Council. That's going to tie up this front line over here, well, this section of the front line over here as we move down. More of the Inner Council, the Dunman Hunters with that surround. Once again, just... Palace Guard are still here. There's still 2 Palace Guard left alive, which, considering how outnumbered they've been, just goes to show how tough they can be in a sustained melee against units which just cannot match their skill. Meanwhile, this unit of Hiri Alth, which has been doing very well, slowly but surely munching its way through the Rudauer lines, is ultimately not going to have enough left in the tank to kill off all of these savage Northmen, I don't think. So yeah, very well played once again. There are the Rudauer clansmen, getting some friendly fire from their own axe throwers. That'd be really unfortunate if you spent like minutes and minutes in melee against the elves. There goes the Rudauer General. Interestingly enough, there goes the Rudauer General. Yeah, if you spent minutes and minutes in melee against the elves to gain victory only to get an axe in the head from your own friend, that would be most unfortunate. Here comes some Rudauer clans, and actually breaking. Still those Inner Council fight on. Just goes to show you saw Rudauer breaking all over the place in this battle and having to reform, but even in this situation the elves stand firm and make it as dicey as possible for Rudauer. And it's so close as well, because most of what Rudauer have left are really low damage, low quality troops. If Mirkwood had managed to do just a little bit more damage to anything really earlier on in the fight and had more troops left here in the late game, this would have gone Mirkwood's way, but as it is, it has gone the way of Rudauer. Trollshaw axe throwers getting into a position once again to start throwing their axes into the back of the Hiri Elf, and that's going to break them. There they go.
We that were slain and defeated on the field, but fate has been kind and delivered us victory.
Indeed, and I feel as though these 2 replays are good to show, because I feel as though against Numenor you would maybe expect Numenor to have the advantage over Mirkwood, and against Mirkwood you would maybe expect them to have the, well, against Rudauer you'd expect Mirkwood to have the advantage, but here both the factions which you probably would have bet against early on went on to win the fight, and it just goes to show that you can't win just by picking a faction in Reforged, and I like that. You know, you have to be a little bit more savvy. Even if you're, you know, in this situation, if you're Rudauer against Mirkwood, on paper, not necessarily the best matchup, but you have options with which to fight against Mirkwood with. You can see nearly 2,000 more men as well. Obviously, Mirkwood getting hugely more kills than Rudauer, but ultimately they were able to leverage their numbers, and ultimately that quality wasn't quite enough to see Mirkwood over the line this time. but very, very close indeed. Tyrannodine Berserkers getting over 100, Ferodrum Javelins getting over 100, as did both Troll Short Axe Throwers. I feel as though those units in general, the Javelin Axe Thrower units in general were what gave Rudour the opportunity to do as much damage as they did to the Mirkwood main line. The Pikes did very well as well, but really only for holding the Mirkwood infantry in place. You can see the Dunman Pikemen doing okay, as well as the Tyrannodine Pikes. One unit of Dunman Hunters getting over 150 kills as well. But certainly you can see in melee, the melee infantry like the Rudour Swordsmen and even the Rudour Clansmen struggled mightily against the Mirkwood troops, as you would expect. But that was never going to be how Rudour were going to win this fight. It was always going to be in their ranged capabilities, their close range capabilities, with their javelins and their axe throwers. So, yeah, as I said before, I feel as though, you know, this Mirkwood being aggressive in both of these two replays also shows that Mirkwood are not just archers. You know, they are more than their skirmishers, and they almost won twice here, and they won against what most people would probably consider to be the weaker matchup for them. And very, very well played here to Kuro as well in this fight between Rudour and Mirkwood, because I feel as though most players probably would have had their lines as Rudour capitulate under this Mirkwood assault, but he didn't. He managed to keep them strong enough, and ultimately the attrition game was won by Rudour. Now, I really, really, really hope that people don't immediately complain that Mirkwood lost a fight, because I'm getting slightly sick of the fact, honestly, that people keep complaining that certain factions are not balanced or they're too weak, when all they really seem to do is watch videos on it, and in spite of what I say, they then say that these factions are weak and useless and can't be used by anybody, and that, I think, does a huge disservice to the people who have spent an awful lot of time making this mod, you know. And just to trivialize it by saying, oh look, they lost a fight, they must be weak, is honestly, I think, quite insulting, and I'm starting to get quite annoyed with it, honestly, even though I'm not a dev myself. It's not too surprising to me that in several comment sections, not just of my videos but of other Reforged videos as well, that JMonster, who is a dev, gets quite exasperated with people that keep saying this sort of thing. I would hope that this shows the opposite. I would hope that this, in an unorthodox approach for Mirkwood, and they were able to win one fight against a foe that they are not really known for being strong against, and even here against a fight which was turning against them, they could have ultimately pulled it out in the long run thanks to their quality. I cannot say more than that. If you still want to call them weak, there's nothing that I can do to stop you, but I will say that you are incorrect, and that's all I have to say on this topic. That's all I'm going to say on the topic going forward as well. I am not going to engage anyone who believes that, in particular, it always seems to be Mirkwood as well, but other factions as well, particularly elven factions, who time and time again we've seen to be extremely powerful, especially Linden and also Imladris. There's nothing I can do to dissuade your opinion at this point. You have made up your mind, and it will not budge unless the elves are made very, very OP in the sense that they are lore-wise. However, this is a multiplayer game. You know, you cannot conform to the lore in that respect, otherwise no one would play anything but the elves. So, there it is. That's my little mini rant here. That's all I have to say on that topic as well. Very close games though, and thank you for Kuro for sending them in to me, and thank you for letting me showcase 0.97 a bit. It's looking very good indeed. It looks very fun to play, and I can't wait until it's out. So, I hope you enjoyed this, and I hope you'll join me for whatever is next.